thank my colleagues who have spoken very highly of the qualifications of Mr. Northey to be Undersecretary at the Department of Agriculture. I may say just a little bit about his qualifications, but I want to spend most of my time expressing to my colleagues in the Senate and to Senator Cruz primarily why I think that the argument over RINs being a impediment to some refineries operating efficiently and not having to or going into bankruptcy or other problems they have. I would say that Senator Cruz has said that there are some things that can be put together to help this situation, and I would name 3 of them that I think would work, and then I would say why I disagree with the senator from Texas about the RINs issue, and why he thinks that that's a solution to it, and why I feel it's not a solution to it. First of all, my colleague from Texas said that there is a problem with Wall Street speculators. I don't know whether that happens every day, but it happens sometimes, and it's something that should be taken care of, and I recognize that back in November of 2013 when I wrote a letter on that very subject urging the regulators to take a position on that. I think greater transparency of this whole market would be very, very good as well. I think that's a possibility. And the senator and I have discussed the EPA putting out regulations on vapor so that we could get more ethanol in the percentage of E15 as being very helpful. But I would say his idea of putting caps on RINs will not work for the reason that when you do that, you're getting the marketplace isn't working, and I suppose I'm a little surprised that a free market person like Senator Cruz would suggest the government stepping in and capping that, but also to speak to the point that the EPA itself in November, as an agency in November last year, 2017, said that the RINs market was working, which puts the agency in a little bit different position than where we think that Mr. Pruitt, the director of EPA, is coming from. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to my remarks right now and express that it's very unfortunate that there is an objection to advancing President Trump's nomination of Iowa Secretary of Agriculture Bill Northey to be Undersecretary at the Department of Agriculture, all because of unrelated concerns over the renewable fuel standard, which is a law passed by Congress and obviously administered by the EPA. I'm very disappointed that a highly qualified and honorable man like Bill Northey is being held up for an issue unrelated to his position. Secretary Northey enjoyed, as you've heard my colleagues say, unanimous support from the Senate Agriculture Committee and has the support of numerous agriculture groups from around the country. And then getting to the RINs issue and my feeling that that's not a legitimate reason for either holding up this nomination or for the bankruptcy that's been referred to or for any other refinery that has trouble. I think it's a manufactured and baseless rumor that the RFS, the Renewable Fuel Standard, has caused an oil refinery in Pennsylvania to file for bankruptcy. This example has been cited repeatedly as a justification for forcing the Renewable Fuel Standard supporters to agree to sudden and drastic changes of how the renewable fuel standard was designed. I've been trying to work in good faith with the senator from Texas and have offered several options, some of them that I just have expressed here in my off-the-cuff remarks, that would result in lower prices in the renewable or the RINs issue. And has been said, that stands for Renewable Identification Number. And that is what we call the compliance credits to make sure that the refineries use the right amount of ethanol in the, to meet the renewable fuel standard. However, I keep being told that I need to, by the senator from Texas, to accept a proposal for a guaranteed cap on RINs prices in the short term to save this Philadelphia refinery. Unfortunately, for those who are spreading the rumors that the problem that the Philadelphia refinery has, that they're due to high RIN prices, from my point of view, and I hope I back this up in a paper that we have disseminated widely within the last week, the facts don't add up very well for the people making the argument that RIN prices are the problem. My staff and other analysts have read the SEC filings and the bankruptcy filings of the refinery in question and come to the conclusion that the Philadelphia refinery cannot pin its problems on the renewable fuel standard. The number one problem that the Philadelphia refinery has faced is the result of the petroleum export ban being lifted, which costs it access to cheaper feedstocks. Another reason, and the second biggest problem it has, is that a pipeline opened which diverted rail shipment of Bakken crude oil away from the East Coast because of the pipeline sending it someplace else, obviously raising the price of the feedstock to the Philadelphia refinery. We keep being told that the refinery is facing hardship because it cannot afford to buy enough RINs to comply with the renewable fuel standard. If that is the case, then why did this Philadelphia refinery sell off a significant quantity of RINs just last fall? That is quite odd, considering the company needs to turn them in later this month for compliance with the renewable fuel standard. Some have said it is executing a market short on RINs, which is dependent upon some sort of federal action that will suddenly drive down the cost of RINs. I would point out that shorting the RINs market is something that Carl Icahn is reportedly being investigated for by federal investigators. I hope that the Philadelphia refinery is not trying to follow that same playbook. I certainly want nothing to do with that kind of chicanery. Finally, the Philadelphia refinery could have avoided needing to buy any RINs at all if it had just invested in blending infrastructure years ago, like many of its fellow merchant refineries did. In fact, the Philadelphia refinery is partly owned by Sunoco, which owns blending infrastructure. We also know that that refinery has an arrangement whereby it supplies ethanol with RINs attached to Sunoco for blending with its gasoline. Other independent refiners with small arrangements have an agreement to return the RINs to the refinery once they are detached. The RFS was created to bring cleaner burning, renewable fuels to consumers. The RIN system was developed as a flexible system that would allow obligated parties to choose between investing in blending infrastructure or buying RINs for the renewable fuel standard compliance. Philadelphia refinery made the decision to buy RINs instead. That hasn't worked out very well for that refinery, apparently, but that was the bet that that refinery made. A cheaper option for renewable fuel standard compliance exists, and the Philadelphia refinery chose to pursue other investments. None of this has anything to do with President Trump's choice to oversee farm programs at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Bill Northey should be confirmed by this body. He has overwhelming bipartisan support. Taking a nominee hostage to try and force an ill-conceived policy change is only going to cause more problems for this body in the future. I don't know what the next step is, but I think that Bill Northey is such a good person for this position. I'm going to continue to work as long as he wants me to work for his nomination to proceed. And before I yield the floor, I will ask unanimous consent to put in the record an article on this issue of the Philadelphia refinery.